Hello, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be custom painting a vintage picnic basket. So it is my goal this summer to have basically as many picnics as humanly possible. Now in my mind, the perfect picnic is like the picnics that you see in old Disney cartoons, where it's like an entire cake, not just part of a cake, like an entire cake, and it's usually pink, and a whole chicken. It's very impractical. But if Donald Duck can do it, so can I. And for picnics such as these, I would like to have the ideal picnic basket. Yes, this is incredibly specific and incredibly niche, but I found this red picnic basket at the thrift store. It's definitely vintage to some extent, and it's so beautiful. The only problem is that it's red, and if you know me, I don't really do red outside of lipstick and a little bit at Christmas time. But the design and quality of this picnic basket is so perfect, I just had to get it. It was only $10, and the top is like a perfect flat wooden canvas to paint a picture on. So I want to tell you my design plan. Now I want this to be like my dream picnic basket, and my dream picnic basket is pink. So the majority of it is going to be pink. However, on the top I want to paint a landscape. Now have you ever seen the 1947 Disney cartoon Bongo Bear? It's part of the package film Fun and Fancy Free, and it's about like this cute little bear who escapes the circus and goes to live in the wilderness and falls in love with a little girl bear, and it's the cutest thing ever. That is the vibe. This is a piece of concept art for that cartoon, and this is the energy I want. One of my main points of inspiration from this cartoon is the bit when Bongo first escapes into the wilderness and he's just basking in daisies. And it's so beautiful. And then he's looking out at the hills over a view of the countryside. There is also a big section of this cartoon where they're like floating around in pink clouds, so the pink does tie in as well. So on the top of this picnic basket, we're gonna have a countryside landscape with lots of daisies. So now that you understand the vision, let's start painting this picnic basket. Alright, I have decided to do this outside because do you see how freaking beautiful it is? The cherry tree behind me. The only drawback of this is that there will be some unpredictable noises, so excuse that. I have some all-purpose cleaner and a cloth, and I'm just gonna start wiping this down. The hardest part is just how there's like all of these woven pieces to kind of get under where there's some dustiness, but it's not too bad. Okay, now I have some primer, just some plain matte white paint, and I'm gonna probably have to do maybe 2 coats or maybe even 3 on this. There's definitely benefits to doing this outside, being that the sun is drying this very quickly. Okay, I finally finished doing the primer, and that took way too long. This is definitely one of the more annoying things I've ever painted. So I'm gonna let this thoroughly dry, and then I'll come back to it to paint it pink. It's another day, and we're back wearing the same dress because I got paint on it when we were priming, so this is going to be my painting dress from now on. We are going to paint this thing pink, but first I'm going to mix the color. So I have the white paint we used before to prime. As a base, I'm just gonna use the white paint we used to prime. I'm gonna try to make a pretty decent amount because I really don't want to run out. I want a pretty light, relatively neutral pink, so I'm gonna start by adding a little bit of this sort of fuchsia-ish color, but then also a little bit of red to warm it up a smidge, and a teensy bit of brown to make it a little less saturated. Okay, let's see how that looks. Alright, I do believe I'm satisfied with that color. Okay, I am just going in, I guess. Oh yeah, I like the color very much. So I'm doing the main body part of this and the handles and the inside, but I'm not gonna do the lid yet because I want to do like a scene on top of that. There's gonna be pink around the edges, but it'll be easiest to do the sort of landscape image first. Okay, but this color of pink though, I'm kind of obsessed. It's kind of perfect. I just remembered that I haven't painted the bottom at all. I guess the primer needs to come back out. Okay, I suppose this is a very niche subject, but describe to me in the comments what would be your perfect picnic basket. What color would it be? Would it have images on it? Would it have fancy compartments? And then even further than that, what is in your picnic basket? What is the perfect picnic for you? I am gonna be having a cartoon-themed picnic because cartoon picnics are literally perfect. Like, if you've ever seen the picnics in old Disney cartoons, they just look positively scrumptious. And something I've noticed is that they always have a whole cake. Like, not part of a cake, a whole entire cake. And it's usually pink as well, and you know that I kind of have a thing for pink. Another cartoon picnic thing that is wildly impractical, but I love it, is a whole chicken. Like, you don't need a whole chicken at a picnic unless you have like 10 people. But like, I don't know, it's a vibe. I feel like that needs to be its own Pinterest aesthetic, vintage cartoon picnics. And basically the main thing of it is just unrealistic. It just needs to be unrealistic. Bring the most food, the most unnecessary food. For example, there's an old Disney cartoon, I think it's from 1940, called Seaside Picnic, and it's a Donald Duck cartoon where he's having a picnic by the ocean, and he has such a preposterous amount of food, it's actually incredible. And there's no way he's eating all that, but I mean, it's kind of iconic behavior though. I wonder if that's just a symptom of Donald's encounter with his cousin Gus, who comes and eats all his food. If you know, you know. While the outside is drying, I'm going to start painting the inside, and then we can flip it over and get the bottom. Okay guys, we're gonna have a bit of a Bob Ross moment because I'm going to paint a landscape with you. I'm gonna start by mixing some sky blue. So I'm just taking some white and a little bit of this dark blue. That's a very cool toned blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of this sort of cyanish color as well. I am very happy with that color. I'm just gonna paint this pretty much all over. Now later on, I am gonna be making sort of a pink frame around this, so I don't actually need to go like perfectly to the edges or anything. Okay, I definitely didn't make enough of this blue, so I'm gonna make some more. So at first I want this to just be a pretty opaque layer, and then I will be building sort of an ombre on that. And then I have a hairdryer because I'm impatient. Now I need some really, really pale pink, so I'm gonna mix some of this color we used to paint the basket with a little bit of white. And now I'm gonna make an ombre starting with the light pink on the bottom and sort of making it bluer towards the top. I'm gonna use a little smidge of water to help me out. Okay, I'm actually just using some of the pink not mixed with the white. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. The bottom here doesn't look great, but this is mostly gonna be covered, so I don't really care. And I'm once again going to dry this thoroughly with the hairdryer. Now I'm just gonna go in with a bit of a smaller brush, and I'm gonna use the pink we used earlier and some white. Now, as Bob Ross would say, let's make some happy little clouds. Using the pink, I'm just gonna do some tiny little circular motions to make some irregular shapes. And I'm actually gonna leave a little bit of the blue sky exposed in a couple patches. I'm also using a lot of this sort of dabbing motion. I'm sort of making some little layered levels of pinky fluff. Now I'm just gonna blow dry this again. Now I'm taking the same brush with some white, and I'm gonna sort of go over the pinkest parts to sort of highlight the clouds. And I'm sort of very, very softly filling in a little bit some of these bluer parts. And that's sort of just to make this feel more like it is one whole cloud. And when my brush is pretty dry, I'm not gonna wash it off. I'm gonna do some little circular motions to sort of rub off the excess paint kind of around the clouds, around the edges, just to make some little sort of wispy parts. Okay, I'm really liking that, but I do want a little bit more of a powerful pink punch in a few spots. So I'm taking this fuchsia color, I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of water, and then I'm kind of rubbing most of it off onto a paper towel. And I'm gonna do that same sort of dry brushing thing kind of under the clouds and where I want them to be the darkest. And you definitely want to leave the highlighted spots alone. This actually gives kind of like purpley effect when you put it on the blue, which I really like. Okay, I do believe we have some satisfactory clouds. Now I want to create a mountain range just below these clouds. And I want this mountain range to look quite distant. So it's basically going to start with making the color we used for the sky. So there I've made a little bit more, and now I'm just gonna add some more of this dark blue. If you wanna know sort of the scientific reasons for this effect, air particles reflect blue light, which is what makes the sky blue, but it also means that stuff that's further away from you also looks bluer. So you might notice this if you're sort of like looking over the ocean and you see some mountains really, really far away, they will look quite blue. However, because it's on this spot where we have some of the pink blended in, I'm gonna mix some of that light pink with this. So this is going to mute it and make it look a little bit more grayish like this section does. So I'm just gonna go right in with the paint real opaque and just start painting some mountains. So I'm just going for some irregular, craggy, rocky shapes. Okay, now I'm sort of buffing this out more towards the bottom, and I have ever so slightly wet my paintbrush to do this. So I'm kind of having it like fade away towards the bottom, but I'm gonna bring sort of some shadows from some of the mountain down there. Honestly, kind of like tree roots. There's a reason they call it the roots of the mountain. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of white and just do a little bit of snow on our mountain. And you do want to be sure that you sort of keep the same direction of the light source. So I did the highlights of the clouds on this side, so I'm gonna do the highlights on the mountains on the same side. Honestly, I'm not gonna go crazy with this. I just sort of want it to be a little bit on the tips of the mountain. And now I'm gonna wash my paintbrush off, and we're gonna start creating some foreground. Now I want there to be a river going through there, and to get this sort of reflective effect, I need to paint a little bit of the colors that's happening in the clouds, just kind of randomly here. So just a little pink, and a little bit of our fuchsia color. I actually want to bring back a little bit of blue. All right, and while it's still wet, I've washed my paintbrush, and I'm just gonna do some back and forth horizontal motions. And I'm gonna try and blend the top of this with the bottom of the mountains. I'm gonna take some of this sort of dark muted green, and I'm gonna mix in some of our handy dandy dark blue, and this is gonna be sort of our foreground grass color. So I'm gonna start by outlining the river, and I'm gonna have it start around here, and I'm gonna do a very sort of horizontal swirly shape. And then sort of going back to the bank, I'm gonna start the river very small, and it's gonna get wider as it gets closer. And then I'm just gonna fill in a bunch of grass outside of that. Now I'm definitely keeping in mind the sort of pink frame that's gonna go around this, so the river is probably gonna be cut off around here. And I am once again going to wash my paintbrush off, and it's just ever so slightly damp, and I'm gonna blend out the green at the top. This is definitely trickier than with the blue colors because it's so dark, so I'm probably gonna have to wash my brush off again in just a second. A little bit of irregularity in the opacity is actually fine because it being a little bit lighter in places makes it look a little more natural anyway. At the edges of the river, I'm gonna do like some little, just sort of bits where it stabs inward with the green, if that makes sense, just to make it a little bit more irregular. I'm gonna get out my teeny little paintbrush for this. Once again, very horizontal motions work well. Just with some white, I'm gonna throw some teeny little highlights into the river. Okay, I'm gonna blow dry this real quick. And I have some green here that's basically a lighter version of the dark green we're using, so I'm gonna put a bit of that on my brush. This is our medium brush again. And I'm gonna mostly dry this off on some paper towel. And I'm just gonna do a bunch of dabbing on all of this dark green section. And this sort of just gives us more of a grassy effect. I am going to leave some of the darker green a little bit more prevalent, but I am also going to bring this right to the edge of the river. Right now you're essentially creating highlights for the grass. So on this left side of the river, I want it to stay a little bit darker because that needs to be more of a shadow. Now I'm going to take some of that lighter green and put it a little bit more heavily on my brush, but still somewhat tapped off. And I'm going to make sort of some bushes in the distance, bushes and trees. And this is sort of going to go up towards the mountains a little tiny bit. I'm going to get a teeny bit of my dark green as well, and add that into the tree section a teeny bit, and we're creating some light shadows with that. We're not really creating like defined trees particularly. This is sort of like a more hazy painting style. I'm gonna creep a little bit of darker trees up the mountain because there tends to be more evergreens around mountains. And now our trees need a little bit of highlight, so I'm actually going to get some yellow. So just a little bit of that, once again tapped off on some paper towel, and I'm just tapping some of that in. It creates a little bit more warmth. I am gonna mix the yellow with a smidge of white as well to give it a little bit more punch. Okay, so I guess this is kind of actually a mid-ground because now I want to create like an actual foreground. So right here, I'm going to create sort of the side of a little mound, and I'm going to do that on this side as well. Now I'm going to give this some slightly rough edges, not perfectly sharp. I have my brush in a little bit of a fluffier sort of state, and I'm going to go back into that lighter green, just very lightly. I'm going to tap it off the teeniest bit on some paper towel. I'm going to start with some of that dabbing motion, but you might be able to see it's creating a little bit more of precise little specks. And that's because we're creating some slightly closer up grass. Once again, remembering where my light source is coming from, which is this way. So I'm mostly starting by creating my highlight areas on the grass. And now I'm going to start doing a little teeny upward motion. So I am very, very lightly creating sort of tufts of grass. And as you get closer to the foreground, you can make them a teeny little bit longer of strokes. And now I'm going to get my yellow again and do the same thing. And I'm just going to build this up for a while. Now I'm going to go back into that bright pink from earlier, dab a little bit of that off, and I'm going to start speckling these in a little bit like teeny little flowers towards the edge of the river too. Sort of make like a little field of flowers. I'm going to use a little bit of white as well. And now I'm going to get back out our teensy little brush, and I'm going to start doing some more detailed daisies in the foreground. So I'm actually going to start with our light pink. I'm just making a pretty classic daisy shape. I'm going to make some that are bigger as they come closer to the foreground. And to sort of accentuate the grass, I'm going to do quite a few of these close to the edge of these little hills, and even sort of like half daisies that are peeking over the edge. I'm still going to do a few more teeny little dots down on the landscape. Alright, now I'm going to go in with some white on a lot of the bigger ones and sort of highlight them. Now I'm going to get some yellow again, and I'm going to mix it with some brown. For the bigger daisies, I'm going to do their little middles starting with this brown color. And then I've mixed some yellow with just the teeniest bit of white to make it more opaque. And on these daisies, I'm just going to do the teensiest little dot of yellow on the left side of the brown dot where my light source is coming from. This gives the bigger ones just like a little bit more dimension. And then on some of the smaller daisies, I am just going to do the yellow for the center. Now I'm going to do one more layer of kind of ultra close foreground. I'm just going to take some dark brown, and by the edges of my painting, I'm going to creep some tree branches in. We're taking our light green again, and I'm going to throw some leaves on this tree. Once again, our trusty tapping motion. I'm going to mix our darker green with a little bit of yellow, create some shadows with that. And then some of our yellow mixed with white for the highlights once again. With our teeny little brush, I'm going to take some more of the transparent yellow and use that to highlight some of the wood parts of the tree a little bit. That is our landscape painting all done. I'll come back another time to do the pink frame. Alright, we're back again to do the frame around our image, and I have this piece of paper that I'm going to cut into a stencil. So here's our lovely painting, and I have this piece of paper. I want it to be like a nice, interesting frame shape. But in order for it to be super symmetrical, I'm going to fold this piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half that way, and then fold it in half that way. I have it folded so there's like a cross on it, like that. And I'm just gonna draw what I think is a nice kind of curvy shape. This is kind of like cutting out a paper snowflake. Okay, now I'm gonna cut this out. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now I'm just making those sort of double-sided tape loops so that I can tape this piece of paper down. Now I have the pink paint that we mixed before, and I'm just gonna paint over top of this. I'm gonna paint strokes starting on the paper and sweeping outwards, because this way I have a better chance of not getting paint under the stencil. And then with the stencil still on, I'm just gonna go over the parts that are dry and do another layer. While that layer is drying, I'm just gonna go around all the rest of the lid to make it pink. And we'll speed up the drying process a bit again. And yet another layer. Okay, now let's take the stencil off. Now I'm just going to go around some of the edges with my paintbrush to make them extra opaque and sharp. So at the moment this is basically just a pink basket with a picture on top, and I want it to be a little bit more tied together, so I'm going to sprinkle some daisies around the pink part on the top and on the sides. Once all the painting was done, I sprayed on a bunch of layers of this protective sealant to keep the paint nice. And with that, this vintage picnic basket repaint is finished. That is the finished result of my vintage picnic basket. This was a super fun repaint and I'm excited to use this on some future picnics. I've already had a fair amount of picnics, which you can see on Instagram, linked in the description, but hopefully you'll see some content soon with this beauty. Part of how I know I succeeded with this is when my mom was walking past my little workstation and saw the painting on the top, she was like, "Oh my gosh, it totally looks like the Bongo Bear cartoon." And I was like, well, thank you very much. So apparently my theme was communicated. I've already done like 4 coats of the clear gloss on this, but I might even still do some more because I really want this to stay well and not chip or scratch or anything. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching me play Bob Ross for a little bit. I really like painting, and repainting stuff is an excellent way to not only make it match your aesthetic, but make it super unique. Nobody else is going to have a picnic basket exactly like this one. Now tell me in the comments, how would you paint your picnic basket? What color would it be? And what would the perfect picnic look like for you? What would the location be? What foods would you bring on your picnic? And that would be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Where is my paintbrush? So the majority of it is going to be pink. However, on the top, I want to paint a Bleh. No, that's not how you speak English.